Welcome everybody to Crypt I've Been Thinking, and this is going to be a very, very cool interview. And my guest is definitely going to be talking about some important things. I do want to say that who knows, like some of these, this might get into some sensitive topics a little bit and maybe a little bit triggering. I don't know. I just want to make sure I put that warning out there. If you are sensitive to certain things, just keep that in mind. But I was letting people know, and as I want to say, my guest for this evening is Greg Fernandez Jr., and somebody I've known for a few years now, and he does my editing, which is super cool of him. Thank you so much, Greg. And you're a man of doing many things. You're definitely an author, and you're constantly writing books. You've already published several books, which I'd like to hear about in this conversation. And this was, I was letting people know, kind of a spur of the moment. We were talking yesterday afternoon, and I said to you, maybe you should try writing a book totally out of your comfort zone, something that you've never even thought about writing, or maybe something you have thought about writing but were a little reluctant. And you said, I would like to someday maybe write a book about my life and my journey, and from your perspective and the things you've been through. And I thought that was a great idea. I hope you do write this book. And we kind of talked about maybe this would be a great way to kind of just start hashing that idea out, was to bring you on the show. I love when I can sit down and talk with people, and I'm fascinated, Greg, by their stories. Because I tell people there's so much wisdom that people have and knowledge, and whether it's what to do or what not to do. If people would just take the time, and it's hard in this busy world, I get it. People are busy. There's information coming at them constantly, but I always try to tell people, maybe just sit back and listen to people once in a while. Just shut your mouth, sit back, listen, and let them tell their story. Because, the great thing about as you get older is it comes with wisdom, we hope. And then you have the hindsight is, 2020, and you can look back at things. And I constantly do that in my life. And I thought that this would be a great, because I do know that you're thinking, like I just said, about writing a book about this. And I thought, well, let's get into that. And so I welcome you to the show, Greg. This is going to be a really great conversation.
Well, thank you, Rick. I really appreciate that. Yeah, it was a very challenging idea that you had to do something like that. And depending on how this interview goes will depend on if I write the book or if I don't. So it's all on you, my brother.
No pressure at all. There's no pressure at all.
You got this. You got this.
I do got it. I mean, well, because I find people I find your story fascinating too, as well as many other people I speak with. But I like to always, and the reason I'm kind of doing this is kind of something, Greg, that has been happening on the show a little bit more recently, is where I've been bringing guests on, and I want to get to know who they are. I think we talk a lot about, what's going on in the world, and you get into all these, topics that are hot topics and stuff, and that's where we kind of focus on. But I'm always fascinated by the person and their journeys, because for all the reasons I just mentioned, I really think people's stories are interesting, and I love it when I can kind of drill down on people's lives, and I think it helps them. I know it helps me, and a lot of people don't ask their guests, I don't think, about who they truly are and what they've been through. And so it's going to be something that I'm working my way through too. And if you have any questions for me, Greg, by all means ask. Fair play is fair play, but why don't I figure let's go back to when you were like, I don't know, it's hard to pick a time, but let's say like a young age, like 10 or somewhere around there, because I do know that you have some bullet points that you want to cover, and I know you're a writer, you take notes. I know all that. I definitely know you're doing that. So let's start at the age that you want to, but I want to go back to when you were young, and I want your kind of start there.
Yeah, well, I grew up, I had two dads and two moms. Not they were in a heterosexual way, but I had my mom, and I had a stepdad, and I had my dad, and I had a stepmom, and it was just normal to have four parents. And I didn't really think too much of it. I look back now, and it worked out better than I thought that it would. But I think coming from that, and now that I'm a parent now, seeing what it's like to be part of a broken home and how tragic it can be on the kids, even if they don't understand what is really going on. And I did not understand all of the bad things, all of the evils that were going on, all of the struggles that my parents were having, and then some of the darkness that they were actually going through. To me, I was just a regular kid We watched sports. We watched wrestling. We had big birthday parties. I had double presents because I had two homes traveling back and forth. But I didn't understand a lot of the struggles that my parents were having. And one of the things that I was thinking about is how I know your parents are still together. They've always been together, right?
Yep, since they were like 15 years old. That's incredible.
What is that like? That must be that I don't know. It's just I'll never have that experience, but I want my children to have that. I want them to understand that is normal. That's how it should be. It shouldn't, like my dad. I love my dad. He's on his third wife now. Of course, my stepmom, she passed away from cancer, from bone cancer. She smoked and did not want to give it up, and that's just that. Right. Just what happened. So it's not like my dad was running around leaving all of his wives. My mom cheated on my dad. So at the age of 2, when I was 2 years old, is when my parents actually split up. But I'm always curious because I don't know that many people whose parents have actually been together their whole life and they're still together. That must be awesome. How are they now?
They're amazing, and It's the more I talk to people, I realize, like, because you kind of think like that's how things are. Like, it's like, oh yeah, of course, like this is just normal. And then the more I interview people and talk to people and get to know people, then they kind of, trust me enough to kind of, I'm really blessed, and I don't take it for granted when people come and open up to me and talk to me, and I try to be very open, and I don't judge. I don't want to be that type of person. I just want to hear their story because, as I was saying, there's a lot of wisdom and you can learn from people if you just take the time. And I just always thought that was kind of a normal thing, and it's incredible. I think and then what's really kind of special too is my wife's parents are still together. They've been married like, oh my God, for like forever. Like they've been that's cool. Their only marriage. And they married young, and they're still together. So I don't know if it's a generational thing, which I'm sure it is.
It's a Canada. It must be a Canada thing.
It's a Canada thing, yeah. But yeah, I don't know many. I'm trying to think if I know anyone else that has stuck it out. I'm sure there is. Oh yeah, our best. This is kind of weird now that you got me thinking about it, Greg. Our best friend that we've had, my wife and I have had for 30 years now. Her parents are still together. And she just got married, and she's like me, my friend who's been on the, who will be on the show eventually, because I want to bring her on the show because, as I said, we've been friends for 30 years, and she's friends with my wife and I, and she just got married like 2 years ago, and she's a diehard, she's old school. When you get married, it's for life, good or bad, sickness, health. You're in it for the long ride, and so it's probably why we get along. And now I never even thought of that, Greg, until you kind of brought that question up. But cool. It's really cool. And the downside, I would say, and I know it's coming, is that my parents are still together, and my wife's parents are still together. But when they do, one of them does pass. I don't think it's going to be long before the other one goes because they don't know life apart. They've been together for so long, and that's a common thing that you start to hear. Is that if a couple's been together a long time, when one goes, usually the second one, whoever follows, pretty close behind, and that's what I worry about with I know that'll happen with my parents. I just know.
Do they fight a lot?
No.
Never?
They're so over that at that age by now that they've been through it all. They had rough patches, absolutely. I remember as a kid, they'd be fighting and stuff. There's ups and downs and everything, but the point is that they stuck it through, and they stuck it. Yeah. They stuck with it, and I think that's a really cool thing and something that doesn't happen very often. I think people run very quickly now at the first sign of any struggle or discomfort, and you got to kind of work your way through that. You're married, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do. I'm on 10 years here, so we've been married for 10 years. We got 2 beautiful children, and it's just such a blessing. Especially there was a time where we didn't think that we were going to have any children, and I had to make peace with that. And my mother-in-law, who was a strong Christian woman from Russia, and she would always ask me. She would always ask me if I was mad at God or if I blamed God for that, and I just assumed, hey, whatever God's plan is, we're just gonna roll with it, right?
Yeah.
So, and yeah, I was sad because I did want kids, and but I had to make peace with it. And what's crazy is as soon as I made peace with it, about a year later, it all happened. So, it was an interesting journey, but we had, growing up, so as kids, when you were growing up, did your parents fight? Did you hear them argue?
Oh
Anything
yeah,
like that?
yeah,
Yeah,
for sure,
a lot.
for sure.
Yeah.
Because my dad, and I've talked about this too, is my dad was, and this goes through all the males on his side of the family. We're dealing with alcoholism. It seemed to be the thing that my family struggled with, and I struggled with. So I'm definitely in recovery for a lot of years now, but it did affect me too. And yeah, so there was fighting, and that's usually what it was evolved around was drinking and stuff like that,
Yeah.
because my dad would be, but he worked hard. Like, that's another thing. Like, he may have drank, but he always went to work. He never, I mean, if my dad stayed home sick, he was sick. Like, it was like, oh no, dad's home. Like, he never ever stayed home from a hangover or anything like that. He worked hard, and he was the only
Is
provider, you know.
is that why you don't drink, or does that have a big
Well, no,
effect on you?
I just got tired of being sick and tired from drinking. Actually,
Okay.
that's what it was for me. But I definitely I was susceptible to it, and my brother was too. And my brother gave it up before I did, and doesn't drink now. He might have the
Wow.
odd beer. Like, I mean, it's rare. My brother has a beer in the summer. And mostly what he does is he'll have an eggnog and rum. That's his thing at Christmas. He'll have one. He allows himself one eggnog and rum at Christmas because he loves the taste of it. But that's about it. And I gave it up fully many years ago. I'm many years into recovery, but I definitely was heading down that path, and could have fell prey to it if I wasn't careful. But yeah, I just got sick of being sick. Basically, it wasn't fun anymore.
Yeah. That's when the party stops.
It does. Yeah, I mean, yeah, waking up and throwing up blood and feeling your head's been in a vice all night does not. Yeah, after a little while, you're just like, this isn't really working out for me anymore, and I'm glad I stopped, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, when I look back at my childhood, I not the woe is me. Everybody has a rough childhood in their
Absolutely.
own way.
Yep.
It's even people. So I don't want to act like my childhood was any rough or any better or anything like that. Everybody struggles. Everybody goes through all of that stuff. My ex-stepfather was a very abusive man, physically, mentally, and some of that is still there. But there are a lot of times where I do remember him. I was scared of him as a kid. First of all, I was really scared of him. And as a kid, he never hit me. Nothing that I can remember. I recall one time he and my mom would always fight. They were always fighting over something. It was always something, and there was a lot. Our house was full of screaming and yelling and cursing, and TV guides getting thrown back and forth. And he was a big smoker, so he would smoke. This is back in the 80s, so he was smoking cigarettes in the house, chain box, and whatever you call it, through the whole house, cigarettes and weed. We found out later when I started smoking weed later on. I found out, what is that smell, and there would always be the top of a shoebox in the back of our van, and he would hotbox weed in the car with us, and we're like 7, 8 years old, and like just no common sense. And I know he had a rough childhood. I think he was touched. I think he was touched as a child, and I think some bad things happened to him as a child. And later on, he would turn around and he would do that to his own kids. So he was my stepdad, and I had 2 younger daughters that were his. And to think that a father could ever physically touch their children or any kids is crazy. But doing that to your own children and everything, it really messed all of us up. And I'll get into that a little later. But
Okay.
the earliest thing that I remember is I was playing wrestlers. We had the old Jack's wrestling ring, and the big Jack's wrestling toys.
I remember.
They're in the other. Me and my brother, we would just go hide in our room and just play with our toys as they fought. That was just the normal thing that we did. And for some reason, he and my ex-stepdad and my mom, and I couldn't have been more than maybe 7, 8 at the time. And they're fighting and they're arguing, and he, I can hear him physically, like, hurting her, physically hitting her or something. And so I jump out of the room, and, and I tell him, don't hit my mom. Well, he looks at me, he says, shut up, and he pushes me, and I fall directly into the wrestling ring, like smack dab right in the middle, and it just cracks. And, for him, it was kind of a breaking point, because he broke down, and he started crying, and he realized that he did something wrong. And then, that was the only time that I can ever remember that he actually physically touched me or physically hit me or anything like that, or any of us, really. But then years later, my mom would tell me some horror stories of what he would do to her. So it was 10 years, those first 10 years of my life up until about the 5th grade when my mom finally left him. That was just our life. They would fight. They would make up. They would just do some crazy stuff. There was a lot of drugs involved, not just weed or anything like that, hardcore drugs, a lot of stuff I didn't realize, and it was my stepmom who was trying to get us out of that situation, trying to tell my dad. My dad was a firefighter, so he worked 24-hour shifts. Right. And then they had their own kids. So there were 8 of us. We had 8 kids from 4 different families, kind of thing. So, kind of this big mixed family. But just at that time when I was young and my sisters, they were really, really young. I look back on it now and it's like, man, it was rough. It was really rough, and I'm glad that we made it through that. And those were the good days of my childhood. He bought me all of these Star Wars toys. He took us to all of the wrestling matches. He would take us to go get to go meet the wrestlers, because I think he was involved with something where he showed up at the actual hotels where the wrestlers were staying, and I think he was bringing them drugs or pills or something. Right. So we always got to sit out there, and the wrestlers, they would sign autographs, they would take pictures with us. I still have a lot of that stuff too. So it's kind of this love-hate relationship that I still have with wrestling, because I want to forget about him. I don't want to think about him. It's even hard to really talk about it, but at the same time, it's crazy because there were a lot of good times that we did have. And wrestling will always be part of that, which is crazy, because I'm a huge wrestling fan. But it's hard to I can't really separate myself from wrestling, from who this monster really was. And like I said, those were the good times. As we got older, as he got older, and as life changed, things got worse. And when my mom left him, she, for whatever reason, she didn't get custody of my 2 younger sisters. Me and my older brother, we went to live with my dad for a couple years. That didn't work out. That was a whole nother issue. But my sisters actually went to live with him. And I think that's where the pedophilia, I think that's where it started with my 2 younger sisters back then. Wow. And for years, I kind of knew that there was something going on. I didn't know exactly what, and then years later on, I found it, and I confronted my older brother about it later, and he still, to this day, kind of won't talk about it, but I believe something happened with him when we were little kids. And I definitely know something happened with my 2 sisters, but it was frustrating as a teenager trying to figure out a way to how do you get my sisters out of this spot? How do you get them away from this monster? Right. Yeah. And it was just, everybody kind of knew, but nobody they didn't know what to do. They kind of turned the other way, or just whatever. And for me, the final boiling point came when I had two younger brothers, and my two younger brothers, all of a sudden, my mom was dropping them off at this guy's house. And so I was like, oh crap, the same thing that happened to all of us probably. If it happened to me, I don't have any memory of it. I don't know. But I was like, everything that happened to us, I don't want it to happen to them. We got to break this chain somehow. And I remember I was there. I was staying over there at my ex-stepdad's house, who, my mom and they had long separated. And my two younger brothers were out in the living room, and I kept wondering why they weren't in a bedroom. Right? I wanted to get them in a bedroom, get them away from him, and he just did not want to put them in the bedroom. And I knew why, because waiting for everybody to go to sleep, and then he could touch them. Right. He could do bad things to them. So I physically picked them up and put them in the room. I protected them that night, but I realized I can't do this every day. I can't do this every night. Something has to be done. Well, I went to the police and found out that my older brother had also went to them. And the police tell me, the detective tells me the story of, yeah, your brother came here. Your ex-stepdad, he tried to touch him. Your brother freaked out, and but they didn't know what to do. So what ended up happening was I had to actually record. I had to have my mom. I had to get my mom involved in this. Really put pressure on her. We got to get them out of there. Got to get my two sisters out of there, away from this monster. And so we had my mom do a little voice recorder, and we had to get my sister to admit that something was happening. That was the only way. Mm-hmm. If we could not get her to say, yes, my dad is touching me, there's nothing that we could have done. This would have never happened. They would still be there, not now, but it would have gotten a lot worse. For sure. And it was already bad. It was bad. And probably so bad, like, we don't even talk about it that much, but so we finally got my sister to kind of admit it on the record, and then I remember I just kept, every night when because they were living with us, was trying to keep them at my mom's house as much as we could, so they didn't have to go back to that monster's house. And I kept telling my sister, I was trying to encourage her to just come forward, to, it's okay, it's not your fault, the same old things, all the stuff that these are traumatized kids, and they were maybe middle school, maybe. And my sister, she still wouldn't tell me that it was happening. And I remember I put them to bed, and I was walking out of the room, and then she kind of opened up right before I left, and then she started she didn't tell me exactly, and I didn't want to know exactly what was going on. She told me enough that we could get Child Protective Services involved and get my two sisters out of that house. Wow. And I'm glad that we did it. I'm still kind of mad at everybody, because I feel like I was still a kid, and I was still going through my own stuff too. And I just wonder why nobody wanted to do anything. Nobody wanted to get them out of that situation. Yeah. They really needed to get out of that. If I could see it as a kid, how the hell could nobody else see it? And it still bothers me to this day. But it's something where it's like, you don't want to let that have control over you. You don't want to let it own you and just put you in this deep, dark place. And I wasn't even the one who was going through that. So I can only picture what my sisters are going through or have gone through, and just how they dealt with it. Nobody ever really got any counseling or any help for it. And
different time though. Like you're bringing up. Wow, yeah. Like I'm listening to what you're saying, and I'm just, I admire you for you being the one to stand up and at least recognize what was going on, and then do what you could, because you were saying like you were at a young age, but if you saw it going on, absolutely the adults around must have known something was up, and I don't know if it was that generation, if it was, because back then so many things were kind of swept under the rug, whether
Yeah.
it was mental illness or there was abuse going on in the family or whatever it was just kind of like nobody said anything, and it was kind of kept under wraps. And I don't know. I don't know what the case would be back then, but I'm glad that you did manage to, get them out of there.
Yeah, and I
It's
think I think
a rough story, brother.
listening to Jake the Snake Roberts years later talk about his
Right.
experiences with his dad and how his dad used to do things to him or his mom too. I think
His
he
mom,
was
he was
saying,
raped by his mother. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and then I remember he was talking about, and this is before I was a parent, and he was talking about like he can't even have his daughter. He couldn't have his daughter sit on his lap because it was just too weird. You know what I mean? And I was like, man, that sucks. That must really suck. And I find myself kind of like that too.
Hmm.
Like I'm not comfortable with them, and I don't know. There's still some of that there, and I don't know how you deal with that. I don't know how you get over that, or if you just do the best that you can.
Yeah.
But I
I
still
remember
wake up
Jake.
at yeah, it was crazy, but he was that part really struck me. I was like, man, that sucks. You can't, you don't want to hug your kids too long. You know what I mean? It's just like it really messes with people, and it's a lot more common. I'm sure everyone that's listening to this has been through that or knows somebody that has been through that, and I don't know how we break that chain. I don't know, aside from just watching your kids 24/7 forever. I don't know how else to break that chain, man.
Yeah. And before I cut you off, you were saying you were thinking of something. Do you remember what you were going to say? Because I kind of added in what, because I do remember that Jake the Snake interview, and I think he said his daughter was in her 20s before he ever let her sit on his lap because he was scared that he was going to become his father. And
Yes.
I just when I heard that, I was like, wow, like that just shows how deep the trauma goes. And
Yes. Absolutely.
you hear other people say like that's the reason they never had children, like they wish they could have had children, they wanted to have children, but they were scared because of the abuse they suffered. They thought they might end up doing the same thing because unfortunately that is sometimes a cycle where the person being abused ends up being the abuser, and this is a cycle
Yes.
that has to break. So I see the fear there, and yeah, I it's a tough one. This is not
Yeah.
easy. Even to hear you
Yeah.
tell the story.
I still wake up at night. I can't sleep most nights and everything, and it still brings me back to those moments, to those days. Because when I got into a lot of trouble, I actually ended up going back and living with my ex stepdad when I was maybe 14 to 15 or so,
Hmm.
and so I got to live with my two younger sisters, and everything came back, and I knew something was happening there. So I would sleep with them, I would protect them, I would not sleep myself, and just tried to protect them to make sure that he didn't do anything to them while I was there.
Right.
And it really brought me to uh, some of the worst days of my life where I was just ready to just die. And I just figured whatever happened. I ended up joining a gang. I ended up just not caring about my own life, doing lots of drugs, and just kind of just gave up and just like whatever, you know. But even to this day, I still wake up at night just to go check in on my kids.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't know, I think it's good. I think we should. I think every parent should. Don't just, leave them alone or anything. But as they get older, it's like, you know, I'm going to struggle with letting them go to. I don't want them to go to their friend's house, just unless I'm there. I don't want them to stay
I get that.
overnight anywhere. And they may not like me for it. They may not understand. Maybe one day they'll hear this. Maybe one day I'll let them listen to this when they're older, over 18 or something. But
Yeah. Right.
there's a lot of reasons why. Not only am I protective of my children, but why I feel like we all should be protective of our children. Why sometimes I get mad at other parents that I see when they just let their children go off and run off and do anything or just be around anybody. You don't know. You don't know who these people are. They may seem like good people. You just don't know who they are. And I'm just going to do my best to protect my children. And if it makes me look crazy, if it makes me look weird, I don't care, because I'd rather be wrong than have something happen to them.
Good point.
It's one of my biggest fears.
Yeah, and I'd be the same way. I really would, because like that's the thing. Like the older people that are listening, like our generation, Gen Xers or whatever, would understand that it was like I always say. I find myself saying, Greg, that it was a different time back then, but it really was. Bad things were still happening, but the world has gotten crazy. Like beyond what I don't even recognize the world sometimes. So I would be one of those parents too. I would want to know, like, if my children were going, I would have to know the family that they're going to go. If they're going to go spend the night, I'd have to know the parents. I'd have to get to know them. I'd have to. You have to do that now. It's unfortunate that you have to do that, but that's not a bad thing. I think being involved in your children's life and really watching what they're watching, especially on the internet, I would be so hardcore with my children when they were on social media and on the internet, that I would want to know, because we know what's out there, and
Yes.
Unfortunately, those young children and young kids are who get preyed on. So it's a different time. Like, social media has really changed the game, and just it's a different world. It's a different time. I keep saying that. I sound like a broken record, but it really was. And I'm just wondering about, did anything ever happen to him, or did he get, like, what happened?
No, not really. Not really. I know he was connected, but even if he wasn't connected, you still hear stories of, they just kind of go off and do their own thing. But no charges were ever pursued by the police that we went to and told them. I told them everything that I thought was going on, and it's a whole legal thing. So I don't blame them. I know they're just doing their job and everything, but no, nothing ever really happened to him as far as through the court systems or the legal systems or anything like that. I think his biggest punishment is that he is being punished on Earth right now, living a horrible life. He's had strokes. He's had he can't work. So I think, unfortunately, the best thing for him right now is to just kind of live out hell on Earth. Yeah. Maybe that's the best punishment for him right now. I do worry that he's still out there, and you just never know. I hope nobody else is bringing kids around him, but how would they know? How would they know if they're like, because he's not going to be on any list. He's not, an official pedo or anything like that, even though he should be. Child Protective Services had they allowed my sisters to get out of that house, but I don't know why charges were never pursued. And we did try. My mom did try to do that, but I just, I'm still mad at her. And I talked to my dad about this a couple months ago, and as a Christian, at some point, it is something I have to just let go. But right now, man, I can't. I'm still mad. I'm still mad about it. I don't know how nobody else saw this, or like you said, it was a different time. It was more about being embarrassed about it, or okay, let's just keep our kids away from it. But we're not breaking that cycle. And so I think I kind of took all of that anger and that hatred and all of that courage as a kid and everything, and carried it with me. And I think God used that to make me a better person, to make me a stronger person, and to have no fear, really. I mean, after everything that we went through, as kids and all that stuff, like, what could I possibly fear? What could anybody possibly do to me after that? And that changed a little bit after I had children. It should have changed once I got married, once I found the love of my life. I think about that now. It's like it really should have changed then. But it's still, now to this day, it's still something that I struggle with. But going to church, it always keeps me balanced. But it's still something that I deal with today.
Right, yeah, and I can tell as you're speaking about it, but I'm glad that you did find that courage and that you stood watch basically over your sisters. Like when you were there, you're like, even if I'm not, I gotta stay up all night, I'm gonna, that just shows that you had courage and that you were there to stand guard, and that says something about who you are, and a good thing, like that you were there to protect. It should have been the adults doing what you were doing, but they failed, and you took the place and you stood up for, you done what they should have did.
Yeah.
And how did your like, and geez, these are sensitive topics, but if I ask anything, Greg, that you're not comfortable with, please just
Oh, it's
say
okay.
we're not going there. But how are your sisters doing? Like, have you guys talked about this, or is it something that is not discussed? Are they okay? Like,
We kind of went back and forth on it. Right now, they're not really talking to me. They like what happened later is they went to live with us, and they brought all of their baggage and everything like that. They brought it with them, and then there was still a lot of problems. Like I said, we didn't go to counseling. I'm not the biggest believer in counseling. I've been to counseling. I think it can work. I think it can help. I think it is good. Not a therapist where they go and they give you drugs, but I'm talking about a counselor, someone that doesn't know you. You just go there and you sit there and you talk to them, and you could tell them anything.
mm-hmm.
And I've done that, and it worked. I thought it was great. I think counseling can work for people in the right context, but they didn't want to go. They really didn't want to get help, and I think that's why they're struggling. I think that's why they're struggling. I'm proud of both of my sisters, but I think, especially my younger sister, because I think a lot more happened to her. I think it was a lot worse, the things that happened to her. But then my other sister, after my mom left this monster, then she got with this other guy, had 2 kids, my 2 younger brothers, and then that guy ended up doing things to my sister too.
Wow.
And then nobody believed her. I was the only one who believed her. And even to this day, I'll bet you if I ask some people, no, that her dad did that. No, she's not going to lie about stuff like that. There's no reason to lie. And so it's like, man, like, I don't understand that. The children are the most, we should be protecting the children
Right.
the most. Scripture clearly tells us, man, if you hurt any of these children, there's some serious pain coming for you. Not in this world. We can do that too, but the problem is, if you go and you hurt those people who have hurt others, you got to be careful, because you may be taking some of that judgment that should be for them. You may be now putting it on you, because you're taking away God's judgment. You're acting like you're God and saying, oh, we need to do this to these people. Punishment, yeah, things need to happen. And it's a slippery slope, and nobody is going to agree on how do you deal with this. How far do you go? Do you torture these people? Do you castrate them? Do you starve them to death? Do you let them repent? Do you hope that they will actually turn back to God? So many different questions that I don't even like to think about or even talk about. But, so then it was like the cycle kept going. So we got them out of that house. Other things happened to them with her new boyfriend that she ended up having my 2 younger brothers with. She ended up leaving him. We found out later he was shooting up with my older brother. He got my older brother involved in drugs and heroin and other stuff. Me and him actually went blow. We were, and I'm like 15. I'm a scrawny 15-year-old, and I'm fighting this grown man who acted like he was a hell's angel, and then and then my brother met a hell's angel, told the hell's angel about him, and he ended up getting beat up by the hell's angels because he wasn't a hell's angel. And so there's a lot of different stories that I could cover.
I know, these are things I never even knew about. Like, and we've been friends for a few years now. We talk very often, and I didn't know a lot of these things. This is tough stuff to speak about, and I thank you for coming on the show and trusting me enough to to do this interview, because I think it may help people to realize that they're not alone, and uh, you know, people go through similar. I think a lot of times people think they're the only ones going through something, and it's just, I think, the human condition where you kind of just think it's only happening to you, or it only has happened to you. And I've talked to a few. I have a good friend too that was abused as a child, and yeah, it's tough. It still affects him. He's aware of it. He'll talk about it, and but it's still there, and something that we'll talk about it when he's comfortable. It might come up,
Yeah.
and he'll kind of bring it up and say, like, he knows why, he knows that it's affected him relationship wise and stuff, and he's still working through it. He's almost 40 years old, so this stuff definitely has a lasting, lingering effect, and all the same things that you said, that he's just worried that, like, is it going to pass on to him, and all these things. This is something that I'm hearing more and more.
Yeah, just
Wow.
looking at children, it's like, what can we do? And I hope everybody just pay closer attention, pay more attention to the children, any child. And sometimes you will see signs. Sometimes you don't know if they're being abused, but you will see signs. God will bring people into their lives who will get them out of that situation, and you may be one of those people. God can use us for these things to get them away from these monsters.
Mm-hmm.
And I just hope that
Especially
everybody would.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was going to say,
No,
especially if the child comes to you and tells you that something is going on, like, believe them.
yes.
Like, don't take that
Believe them.
lightly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, be on their side, because I can't imagine the courage it would take for a child to even come forward and say anything.
Yeah.
And some
Yeah.
people,
And it took, and what's crazy is the first person that I ever brought this up to, that I think that this guy is abusing his kids. The first person I brought this up to was this guy's brother. I had worked with him. He was my uncle, one of my favorite uncles. I love all of my uncles, but he was one of my favorite uncles. He was in and out of prison. He talked smack to Charlie Manson. He was a pretty crazy dude. But we worked at a box shipping company, and he was kind of like my mentor, and I really respected him. I loved him. He was the strongest person. I knew if there was someone that could protect us, it would be him.
Mm-hmm.
And he was pissed when I told him this. It's like he didn't even know that this was going on. He ended up fighting it and ended up really beating him up. The thing about this monster, my ex-stepdad, is he is a coward. If you confront him, if you do anything, he will back down. Always back down. He is just a like slime of the earth. Yeah, just like most cowards. And then my uncle started telling me stories about how when they were kids, he had my uncle had his girlfriend over, and my ex-stepdad tried to do something to the girlfriend. And he had this weird play that he would, like, get a blanket, and he'd be under the blanket, then he'd try to put you under that blanket. Well, he tried to do that with this girl, and my actual uncle, he, started beating him up. And my ex-stepdad, all he did was just put the blanket over him while he just got beat up. And that was, just a snake, cowardly of the cowardly. Yeah. But so I'm pretty sure something happened to him too. And my uncle said, yeah, there was something that happened where we think, some stranger, somebody ended up touching him, and that's kind of where it starts. But we got to figure out ways to break that cycle. Like I said, everybody out there knows somebody. You've either been through it, and it's not your fault. People need to realize it's not your fault. And yes, there's more. I still beat up myself. Man, I wish I would have told somebody when I was younger. I wish I would have done more. But it's not our fault. It's not the fault of these children. But just please pay attention to the children, because sometimes they will say it in ways without saying it. They may come up to you because they respect you, because they don't go to their parents, or they don't want to be around certain people. You will see those signs if you look for them, and I hope people will.
That's a good point. Like, be very observant, and observant is the best word, and realize that, it may display in different ways, and that's why I was saying, if they do come up to you and they do say something, take it very seriously, because I just can't imagine like that how scared they are coming forward and just even bringing it up to an adult, and especially if nothing happens or they get told they're lying or that the adult doesn't do anything. I mean, I just think about how impressionable children are, and things that you think may not matter to them matter and could affect them for so many years after. Um, People have to be aware of that. I talk a lot about that. Like I've had a lot of great guests on where we've talked about, the trauma that children see and endure growing up and how it really does shape them, and especially if it's undealt with. And
Yes.
it's tough. This is not an easy conversation so far. Whew. um, I just it takes your breath away, and it's upsetting. It really is because it's going on, and yeah, people have to start stepping up, and I don't know how to deal with it either. I really don't. That's probably a whole different show, Greg. But to keep it going, because I got to keep an eye on the time here too, because I know we got a
Yeah.
break coming. Yeah, okay, we still got enough to get. But now we're about what age now? You said you went to live with your step.
Yeah,
Were you living
I
with your
jumped
step? Yeah,
around a lot
you
there.
jumped around a lot. 'Cause I
I
want to get
jumped
into
around a
your like
lot.
high school, like when you get into your like early, like teens. What
Oh
is
yeah,
going
I'll
on
tell you
with you?
about high school. I was
Well, it sounds
probably, I
crazy.
probably,
Like like you're in gangs and like I didn't even know some of this stuff. Like you're in gangs and I
yeah, I
mean,
skipped over all that stuff.
yeah. So like, where do you want? Yeah, like, you take it from where you want, from where we left off. But I definitely like this. Obviously had an effect on you and
Yeah,
led you down.
there is a happy. I'll jump to. We can go back over some of the other stuff I wanted to talk about later,
Okay.
but I'll jump to the happy ending. It's kind of crazy. Maybe you've heard a story. Maybe you've watched a comedy movie like this. I was almost 20 years old when I graduated from high school. I always wanted to graduate from Castro Valley High. I had dropped out of school. I had given up on life. I was ready to die. I joined a gang. I looked myself in the mirror and said, "Okay, this this is it. This is it. We're going down."
How old
And
were you
just
when you decided this? Like, how old do you think you were when you were like, "This is it. Like, this is my path. I'm going to
15,
join it."
15
Wow.
years old,
Okay.
probably. Yeah,
Gee.
about 15 years old. And I said, "Okay, well, that's it." Um, I had to go to school, so my mom made me go to school, which is great. And of course, all the gangster buddies were at school, so it was like, yeah, that's cool. I'll definitely go now, And there were rival gangs, and there were riots at our schools. It wasn't one of the toughest schools in the Bay Area. It's actually I don't say, well, not one of the least ones. Castro Valley High is where I wanted to go. Castro Valley High is like the Beverly Hills High, the Sweet Valley High, if you know what that is. It was the cool school, is where you wanted to go, but we didn't live in that district at that time, so I went to school in San Lorenzo. I went to San Lorenzo High for 2 years, and it was a pretty rough school. I had some great times there. I joined a journalism class. I remember I had a teacher. He was a teacher at Berkeley, and he pulled me aside one day after seeing my writing, and he told me, "Hey, you got something here." I didn't listen. I didn't pay
Oh,
attention to him,
really?
and then I remember the vice principal one day. She pulled me in to her. She told me she had a dream about me, and she gave me a typewriter.
Okay, that's
I didn't
cool.
take advantage of any of. I still remember it, and even though I didn't show them the appreciation that I should have, I appreciate it so much because they took the time to help a kid who had given up, didn't really care, was just kind of there going through the whole motions,
Hmm.
and they actually pulled me aside. And I hope more teachers do that. It's maybe stories we don't hear of, but I hope that there really are a lot of good teachers out there. But those were some very lasting things. It really made me want to say, okay, I'm not sure what I want to do. Maybe I want to do journalism. I want to write for a newspaper, which is what I really wanted to do. I wanted to write for the San Francisco Chronicle. And I'm so glad that I didn't, because it's a horrible place to work. It's completely against my ideology and
Right.
everything, it would have been terrible. I would have been writing stuff and then secretly saying, "Oh, this is all nonsense." But the final crutch of this high school thing is I did end up graduating from Castro Valley High. I was almost 20 years old, and technically I had to go to night school. I had to take extra summer classes just to get enough credits to graduate, but I did it, and it was one of the greatest experiences of my life. And
Wow. That's a great way to place the end it, Greg, because I'm looking at the time and we got to make sure that we get into the break here. So stick around, everyone, please, because we got hour 2 coming up. My guest, of course, is Greg Fernandez Jr., and he is talking about his life journey and some of the things that he has gone through. And we're going to continue this conversation for the second hour, and we're going to kick off right where Greg left off. I want to dive a little bit more into his high school days, and we're going to continue the conversation. So please, guys, stick around. It's only going to be a short break, and we will be back for hour 2. Crypt Ricks, I've been thinking. Welcome back, everybody. I told you it wouldn't be that long of a break, and we are back for hour 2. My guest, of course, is Greg Fernandez Jr., and we have gone into a pretty intense conversation in the first hour, and Greg was kind of talking about his childhood and some of the things that he went through, and not an easy conversation to have, but an important one. And we kind of left off right before the break. Greg was talking about how he was in high school and he was kind of part of the gang scene. But what was really cool, and I think he brings up a great point, and we left it off on that, is that there is great teachers out there, and the fact that they recognized that he had a talent for writing and gave him a typewriter is so cool, because those are the type of teachers you remember. We all know the teachers that we hated, and you remember them, but I also remember a couple of teachers, and those little moments were so impactful. I don't even think the teachers realize it, and maybe some of the good ones do realize those moments, but it sounds really interesting, Greg, and I wanted to ask you, was high school a good time, good memories for you? Was a high school, because for me, that's when I kind of blossomed. I did not like grades, kindergarten to grade 8. I was not the most happiest years for me for school, if I'm talking strictly for school, because I just didn't fit in to the school that I was in. It wasn't a fit. And then I found high school, and it was like I found a whole new world of people that were like me. Like, it was amazing. I was like, wow, there is people out there. I'm not the only weird one out there, because I just didn't fit in to the public school that I went to. It was a Catholic school, and I just didn't fit in. So how was the high school for you? Like, was good memories, or it sounded like
I
you
was
were doing
the other
wrong?
way. Yeah, I
Really?
was the other way around. Yeah, I had as far as schooling and friends and all that stuff, everything was going very well until 5th grade, when I got pulled out of school because my mom left my stepdad, left the monster, and I had to go live with my dad. And so that was crushing, because I left all of my friends, and then within a year, I'm back there, and then kind of having the same problems. And then in about the middle of this, in junior high, everything was awesome. My favorite years were probably in junior high. I was like one of the most popular kids in the 7th grade. And so then in the middle of the 8th grade, I got taken out of school again because my mom left her then boyfriend, the father of my 2 younger brothers. So I got taken out of that, and I had to go back and live with my dad. I ended up running away a couple times, and so after that it was troubling, and it was never really the same as far as school. Always in the back of my mind, and I always thought about, man, if I would have not been pulled out of school, would I have still had the same friends and everything? So then we get back, and we're back in I'm living at my mom's, probably about a year or 2 before I start San Lorenzo High. And then she takes us to Southern California. And that's when, with a big bag of weed, my older brother and me, that's all we did. We smoked weed all day, and we played Street Fighter for like the whole year. Spent the whole year doing that, just wasted life. Completely wasted, And So then after that, we come back to California. I start going to San Lorenzo High. It's fine, but it's like you have to be on your guard because, there's lots of gangs there and lots of gangs in the area, lots of gang members that will just show up after school looking to fight people and things like that. And a few times where we had a school resource cop. I don't know if you ever had those. It's just like one sheriff deputy who like kind of watches over the whole school. And so there was this kid from another school. They were gonna fight. A couple kids were gonna fight. The kid brought a gun to the school, and our resource officer, I remember this vividly, he chased him. I didn't even see the gun. Somehow the resource officer saw the gun from the kid, chased him, and it was a whole big thing. Our school would have riots. It would be the blacks against the Mexicans. That was like a big thing back then too. And kids bringing bats to school, smoking weed in class. And here I am just trying to I was just trying to figure out what I was basically. And so I started, I love drama class. So I got back into drama class and started doing that and doing the journalism and just anything to keep my mind off of everything else that was happening as soon as I left those school grounds. And it was a
thing to do, yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
My school was nothing like what you described. Like nothing. No, not here in Canada where I lived. Like nobody was bringing guns to school. I don't even think I saw a bat. There wasn't riots. There wasn't, like, you'd have the odd fight. I think I saw like 3 fights in high school. And they were pathetic fights to boot. Like, they weren't even real good fights. But it was, wow, like, nothing.
Sounds amazing. It sounds like Castro Valley High, which is where I really wanted to go. Castro Valley High was like one of the most diverse schools, where you would have skaters, you would have people wannabe gangsters, and you would have cowboys. It was one of the only schools in the area where, like, there's some cowboys here, and what?
They all got along.
Yeah.
It's like my high school. Yeah, like, we all had our groups. Like, you had the headbangers, you had the jocks, and all of that. But we all still, like, socialized. Like, we were just, like, and that's what was so freeing to me when I went to high school. So I get that. But the school that, what you're describing just sounds like more stress on top of, like, if you have a rough childhood or like a rough home life or anything like that, then you have to go there to deal with that. It's a lot for a young mind to try to navigate, is what I'm thinking as I hear you describe that.
Once I made it back to Castro Valley High, that's when like this light was shining and good things really started happening for me. Like I said, I was already 17, so my 4th grade teacher was the vice principal of Castro Valley High, and my girlfriend at the time was like, "Hey, why don't you just try it, just see if you can get back in?" Mm-hmm. I was like, okay, yeah, sure. So the vice principal, who was my 4th grade teacher, who loved me, who scolded me, is one of she was a very very tough woman, but a very gracious teacher too. Mm-hmm. She said, "Okay, I'm going to give you a chance." So here I am, 17 years old, almost 18 years old, and she's going to let me go back to high school. And I got 2 years. I need to finish 2 years here, so meaning I'll be almost 20 when I graduate, if I graduate at that point. Yep. And so I'm older than everybody there, and that was pretty trippy. That was tough, because I remember I did get into one fight. Well, there were a lot of kids that tried to challenge me, and what would happen is after school, me and my older brother, we drove up on some of these kids and said, "Okay, now what? Okay, you guys want to fight? You want to talk smack to me while I'm in school? Well, now we're out of school. Let's do this." Yeah. No, they all backed down. They all backed down. There was one time, one of the biggest lessons that I ever learned, because sports, I always loved sports. So I was in a PE class, and we were doing football, like flag. I think it was touch football. I don't think we had flag football. It may have been flag football.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I remember that.
And so we did soccer and everything, and that was all fun. I had a lot of fun. That was probably some of my favorite stuff. But there was this one time where we were playing football, and I was guarding someone, and I accidentally checked him. My elbow, like, hit his chin or something. And I didn't think too much of it. I didn't do it on purpose. Um, and so on the next play, the guy gives me a receipt.
Right.
I go to catch the ball and he pushes me, and I go tumbling and I jump up and we're like nose to nose. And you have to remember, I'm 18 years old at this time. This kid, he's got to be 16, maybe 17, a pretty jacked up kid too. And so I just instinctively punch him and I just sock him. And
Okay.
as soon as I punch him, I realize, oh crap, this is it for me. I'm done.
I made a
School is
mistake.
over. Everything I've been working for, my dream of graduating from Castro High is done. And so I'm running. I'm back because he's coming at me now after I hit him, and he is coming at me, and I'm backing up. I'm backing up like, okay, come on. But I'm in my mind, I'm thinking, man, I need to end this. I need to end this. And as a kid, when I was younger, when I was in fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade, I was pretty good at talking my way out of any fights. Right, because people would challenge me then too, but I was always pretty good at kind of standing your ground and just kind of figuring
Talking it
out
through. Yep.
just talking it through. So
Yep.
I was as I'm running backwards and he's following me and he's chasing me, and I'm just moving backwards. I kind of spit on him, he spits on me, and somehow we just kind of leave it at that. Our teacher, who's very old school gym teacher, he's like, okay, let's just all go back. We just all went back to class and never talked about it again. I ended up making up with that person. But if I would have just said that I was sorry, that I did not mean to hit you on the chin, none of that would have happened. And it was a
Right.
big lesson that I learned that day.
That's
Hey,
right.
sometimes you mess up and just say if I would have just said I was sorry, he probably would have been like, okay, cool, let's just keep going on. And nothing else
Yep.
would have happened.
Exactly. Actually, it's happened. Jeez, it happens. But yeah, some people won't even apologize. That's the thing too. It's a good lesson. Like maybe just
Yes.
apologize. So that's a good a lesson that a lot of people should
A
follow
good
that never
lesson.
do. And but I really want to touch on when did you start? Like you see, this is where you've done a lot. Like I do know a lot of the things that you've accomplished. Like you've done music, which you've been in a studio and done your own music, which is incredible because I love drumming and I'm learning how to write music and all of these things I can't. I'm like lyrics. I'm still struggling with in that. And you've done music and you definitely are writing. You've got a lot of books that you put out and are writing currently. You got a new one that's almost out. So you got a
Yep.
lot going on, but did you start, because you said you were in drama, so you like
Mhm.
drama class. Now, were you continuing with that, or did you start writing music? What came first I guess is a good question.
Mm. So I was trying to write like martial arts movie scripts, things like
Oh,
that when I
I
was
love those.
younger. But probably around this time when I was in San Lorenzo is probably when I started writing songs, and so I started rapping and did a little freestyle, a few freestyles, but most of it was just really writing, finding any music that I could write to. When we used to buy a single, a cassette single, and
Yep, I
on
remember
side
them.
B, they would have the music, but it didn't have
Yep,
the lyrics. So I would just
yep.
write to those, and so I spent hours just writing to those ones. And so I just kept doing it, and my gangster friends, they encouraged me, and so obviously it was influenced by that. So it's nothing that I would want, nothing that I'm proud of today, but it did help me kind of work my way to eventually, once I realized that the music business, how bad the music business is, how influential your music can be, and I started
For
trying
sure.
to write good music, everything that I learned from my childhood helped me get to that point to where the last 4 or 5 musical projects I'm really proud of, and I think everything that I went through back then showed me what was wrong, so I was able to take the bad stuff, but still utilize the good stuff that I learned,
Hmm.
how to rhyme, how to write, how to just cut everything and start over. You have to be willing to do that,
Oh yeah.
and it's all practice.
That's right. And did you find that music was a good way to vent your emotions and
Yes.
stuff, like to deal with like your traumas and that? Were you putting that, like it's probably a good way to get that aggression out and work through things? I would
Yes.
imagine.
Yep, it definitely was. Actually, the guy who my music producer, I met him in Castro Valley High. So he started. We were in gym class, and I think I gave him one or two of my songs, and he liked it. He was like, "Hey, why don't you come over to my house?" And I got a nice studio, and well, it was it was in his bedroom. He had the microphone in his closet, and that's where we started. And yeah, that was 1997, I think, and that's when I really started getting serious. And he would take the music we would do, he would create a CD, and at school he would sell them.
That's so
And
cool.
everything started there. He ended up going to work for I forget what company it was, but he went down to Southern California and he worked with a lot of the big names like Busy Bone and some of those gangster rappers and stuff like that. And he ended up coming back and he's still doing his thing. I think he's in Santa Rosa now. Santa Rosa, California. But yeah, he's still doing his things. But I learned so much from him, and a lot of it was humble yourself. You don't just because it sounds good in your head doesn't mean that it's always going to be good,
Oh,
and
I
you have
learned
to
that
be
lesson.
willing. Yeah, you got to
Yeah,
have a good producer who's going to say, look, let's try it this way, or yeah, I'm not really feeling that. And I could always tell whether he liked it or whether he didn't. He was always like, when if I heard the then I knew, okay, let's try it again. But the way that the equipment worked back then is you got one take.
that's
You got
right.
one take, so that means
Yep.
you had to do, and we had four tracks, so we had one take for the rap, so we had to get all of the rap, just kind of let it go. Then you had one take for the chorus, and if you were lucky, then you may get to do some like overdubs after,
Hmm.
and then the fourth track was for the actual music, which he had already done. So that taught me a lot, and so one day I do hope to get back and do some live music because I've been trained from that point. You better get it right on the first try.
That's right. And now they got like I don't even know how many tracks they got now. It's probably endless.
Twenty
Uh,
four, 24.
Jeez.
There's like endless track because it's all a digital thing, so it's
That's
endless
right.
now. Yeah.
And now back in the day, it was like 4 track. I remember when the first like 8 track and 16 track came out. Like studios were just like, it's like they got 16 tracks, and now people just go, what? Like Jesus, like that's you get that on the internet like for free. But back
Yep.
then it was a different time, and music
It
was so
sure was.
different. But that's really cool. That like, see, I like when people try different things and are creative. I love that, and even and are willing, like you said, to humble yourself because playing music if you want to play with other people, you better be, be able to take a little bit of a, people saying like that's not very good or stuff like that. You got to have a little bit thick skin, especially if you're in a band environment. Because yeah, there's some drum beats, Greg, that I think are going to sound amazing, and I play it for my guitarist. He's like, no, I don't get it, dude. Like, and
Yeah.
you can't get
Yeah.
mad, right? Like you got to be okay.
No.
Like maybe just it's not right at the time, or it's just not that good. So let's redo it, and
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
it's a good
Yeah,
experience.
save it. You can always save it for later too, or maybe okay, maybe I like this little riff of the drum beat. Maybe I'll use that later on with
Yep.
something. And one of the things that I always ask people who make songs is, do you make the music first or do you write the song lyrics first? I always found it so challenging to write the song lyrics first, which is
Hmm.
crazy because when we would go into the studio, we would have a bunch of songs written on paper, and then he would play a bunch of background music for us, and we'd have to find something that matched. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that
But I
sounds
always
great.
found it.
Yeah.
I always thought it's so much better if you have the music first and then you write to it. I always found that to be
Oh,
much better
everybody,
than
yeah,
just.
my guitarist, he always has his guitar with him, his acoustic. Like, I mean, our
Mm,
neighbors are probably just like they're back in the backyard again because I'm tapping on the little drum kit and he's got his acoustic and yeah, he'll figure a riff on his guitar and we'll just hum stuff. Like we'll just try to hum
that's cool.
at first and then it's like, okay, we got something and then we know now to turn our phones on and try to record it because you won't remember
Yes.
what you're doing. There's so many songs that are in the ether now that me and him have come up with so now we record everything. But yeah, it starts with the music. Like everybody, at least him and the other people I've talked to, starts on like usually an acoustic guitar or a piano, and then they start building it. Like the lyrics kind of come as you progress with the music. So really
It's awesome.
interesting. Yeah, I'm so fascinated by that. And I know, I've talked to you about music before, and The one thing, and if you have any points that you want to hit on too, Greg, please. Like I know you have some points. I hope I'm hitting on some of them organically, but
Yes.
one thing I wanted to always ask you was because you're very, you're very religious now, and you're very open about, being a follower of Christ and speaking about it. Now, was that always something with you, or did this something that came along later? I'm just kind of curious because I don't know that journey about you. I don't know if you were always a follower, or is it something that came later?
Yeah, I was thinking about this yesterday and was thinking about like where would I start? Where would the journey begin? Because yes, it was always there. Jesus was always there, and I think your parents, I think they're Catholic, right? Or
Yes,
did I
correct.
get? Yeah. So for you, it was probably always there too, right? That doesn't
Oh
mean
yeah,
that whatever So then this is what I worry about with my children too. I don't want it to just be like I want it to be a part of their life, definitely, but I want it to stand out, and I know there's going to be moments in their life that are going to stand out. So yes, Jesus was always a part of our life. We didn't go to church as children. Every now and then we did, and I'd be like, oh, I don't want to go. I don't.
I was like
What are
that
we
too. We
doing
went at
here? You
Christmas.
know?
My mom was the
When it,
worst. She went at Christmas. That was the only time she went. I'm like, Mom, come on. Like you're being kind of weird about this. But yeah, same thing. I didn't want to be there.
Yeah, so it wasn't like that, but then it was more of my grandparents. My grandparents, they would go, and both sides of my dad's parents, they were Catholic. My mom's parents, she was adopted, so she was adopted by white people. How dare they? But so she kind of grew up in that. So I think by the time she had us, she was kind of like, it's just kind of a part of life, you know what I mean? So it wasn't like you didn't have the passion, you didn't have the fire for Jesus, which is what I found later. And then I found, well, you better learn how to control that fire, because you don't want that fire to burn out other people too, or people just don't even want to listen to anything that you're saying, or there's that crazy Christian who's talking about this stuff again. But so I was thinking about that. There are a lot of things that stand out, but yes, Jesus Christ was always there in my life, thank God, and I've never denied him. My ex-stepdad, I vividly remember as a child when I was 6, maybe 7, and he and my mom, one of their fights that they were having, and he's on his knees and he's screaming up to God, and he's asking, why God, with his fist clenched and it's raised and everything, and he's so angry at God. And I remember thinking, why are you so angry at God? Why are you blaming God for all of your problems, for everything that is going on here? And I just remember saying, I don't ever want to be like that. I don't ever want to blame God for everything, or just, why did you do this to me? Why have you forsaken me? And then you read the scripture, and that's exactly what Jesus says to God
Right.
as he's dying on the cross for our sins. Why
That's
have you
right.
forsaken me? It's crazy. It's very interesting stuff. We could get very deeper later on a different show for sure. But I think some of the things that really stood out to me was, I got saved, what they call saved. I got saved 3 times. It didn't do anything for me. I think it helped me in my spiritual journey. God always brought Christians around me. There was one time where I was in juvenile hall, and it was some trumped up charges, not Donald Trump, but it was some made up charges. And they said there was a scratch on my mom's finger. They said that I, beat up my mom or something based on that. What they were doing was, I was in a very bad place back then. We were running away, my brother and I. We had ran away from home. The school resource officer caught us, and this was going to be the tough love time where he was going to put me in juvenile hall for a weekend and show me what, if you keep going down this path, this is what your life is going to be like. And Rick, it was one of the best things that ever happened to me in my life. And I decided right there, I'm never going back to jail. I'm never going, and this is just juvenile hall. I can't even imagine what prison is
Exactly.
is like.
Yeah.
But that was enough for me. It scared me straight. And I just vividly remember that I was sitting there, and I went through the whole thing, and I learned, it's just like, this is horrible, this is terrible. Like, I had it good, man. I was playing wrestlers. I had all of the wrestlers here. Like, I had all the Star Wars toys. My life was pretty good compared to what I'm looking at now. And so I was reading, I just they gave us some books that we could read, and for whatever reason, I picked out a comic book, and it was Jesus. It was about Jesus Christ. It was, I don't know how scripturally accurate it was, but they were talking about Jesus, and I just remember reading it, and all of a sudden I stopped, and I prayed that Jesus would release me from this place. And I'll tell you, 30 seconds later, I was free. 30 seconds later, I was released from juvenile hall. Now, obviously, this was already planned. I didn't know it. I didn't know that this was going to be planned. This was already planned. They had the weekend thing, the 72-hour thing, whatever, the 48 hours. And I still had to go into what's called a halfway home, where you're just kind of there with the other runaways, the truants, the people that are just getting out of juvenile hall, and they don't really have any place to go yet. So it wasn't like I was free and all, I'm back at home and blah, blah, blah. But it was a moment that really stands out to me, because whereas everybody else knew that I was going to be free at that time, I didn't know it.
You didn't.
And I just happened to pray. So it's like, it's the power of how strong is the power of prayer? And that was one of the first times that really stuck with me and said, Jesus is not just someone that they talk about. This is real, and I need to learn more about this. So after that, I got saved 3 times. It didn't really help me. I ended up joining gangs. I ended up doing a lot of bad stuff, later. And it was really when I went to work for family radio, for the radio station, that I was surrounded by Christians. And I had to talk to them, and they, and we would hear, because they would play the radio station. So it's all about God. Most of it is just scripture reading. It's just them reading the actual Bible. So I got to hear all of that, and I'm like thinking, oh yeah, that makes sense. This makes sense. And then I started reading the Bible on my own. That's where I met my wife, my future wife, and it was one of the biggest experiences as far as becoming a strong Christian. Not just someone who just, yeah, I'm a Christian. I'll see you next week. Do whatever you want. It lit the fire under me to say, this is real, and I want to be a part of this. I want to learn more about Jesus Christ. I want my children now to have that same feeling. They can't have it the way that I did. And at the same time, I don't want to push it too much on them to where they fall away from it. Does that make sense?
Oh, it makes total sense. Yeah, I get it. Because, that's the balance that you're going to have to struggle with. Kind of, and navigate is probably a better word, is that you don't want to force it, because you know what children do. They usually rebel. Like, I did. Anything my parents wanted me to do, I'm like, I don't want to do it. And that would be, and religion was kind of forced. It was, like, I didn't have a choice. I went to a Catholic school for the first, in Canada, we have like kindergarten to grade 8. And then that's like, if you either go to a Catholic school or you go to a public school. And so I went to a Catholic school, and then from grade 9 to 13 back then, that was your high school.
Is it like a private school that your parents pay for, or is it just like another?
No, it was no. There's a couple of Catholic schools here, and it was forced.
So anybody can go, or is it? Sure. Or do you have to be part of the Catholic community?
I think you have to be. I was so young. Like I went. I'm not sure how I got in. I'm sure I had to be baptized and all that. I would assume. I don't know.
Oh, so you are baptized then?
Yes, of course. I went through all of that. Yeah, I went through all of that, but I was also in trouble a lot because I asked a lot of questions that the priest couldn't answer, and I was just somebody that questioned things, and I didn't mean to be.
Got the ruler? Did you get the ruler or the pedal?
No, I never got that. I never got bad enough where I got the belt. And I tell people, like, back in the day, the principal could, if you did bad enough, they could take the belt and they would smack you across the hands.
Yeah, in the second grade, we still had the belt.
Oh my God, now you'd be in jail, like what they used to do. But it worked. I mean, I never had that. I never got that bad, but my friend did. He lit a garbage can on fire during lunch, and then they caught him, and he got, his hands were bruised for like days, man. I was like, and that scared me straight, kind of. And I remember, because you were talking about how you got scared straight, and that was the one thing that always saved me from wanting to do any crime. Like, because I talked to people, that, and they would tell me about prison stories, and I'm like, I don't want to go there. Like, it sounds horrible. Like, so I'm just not going to go there. I'm just going to do things. And then I had buddies in high school that would go and do B&Es, and then some of them ended up in jail as we got older. And I always kind of just want to go hang around with the girls and stuff. I was like chasing all the girls in high school. I didn't want any part of yeah, I didn't want any part of jail or prison. I was like, nope, I'm not going there. So, but yeah, it was interesting, and I get what you're saying. Like, you don't want to force it on your children, but you want them to be aware of it and explore it. I guess it's gonna be tough, I
Yeah,
think, for you.
I think
But I
so.
was going to ask you too, where you met your wife, and you did answer that already. Is that you? So you met her through church? Is
Um,
that what you met
I
your wife?
met her. I actually, I worked at a coffee shop, at a drive-through coffee shop, and
Nice.
she one day she came in to get hired, and I made sure she got hired. She looked good. I was like, yeah, let's hire this person. I was the manager at that time, the worst manager ever. All I did was play my own music, forced everybody to listen to my music, and yeah, we just had a really good time there. So anyway, so she got hired. She almost got fired within a couple weeks. I convinced the higher ups to give her a second chance, and she made it through. But that's where I met her. I was her boss. I started out as her boss at a drive-through coffee shop. So
That's so cool. And well, and was she always very religious too? Was her family, is that a big
yes,
part of
yes.
that?
So she came. So they came from the Soviet Union, and they
Mhm.
came to San Francisco when she was about 5. Right before the Soviet Union collapsed, they
Right,
had
right.
came over here. They lived in a small little bathroom type, just a small little shack out in San Francisco. Her dad worked his way up. He didn't know the language here. Um, they got a job at family radio stations. If anybody knows Family Radio Inc., there's some good stuff. There's some bad stuff. They were the ones who thought, they predicted. Well, Harold Camping said, look up Harold Camping. He predicted the world was going to end, and just ruined the whole company. I think he took it over. He did not start the Christian radio station, but he ended up taking it over, and a lot of bad things happened. But that's where my father-in-law got his job, because he knew, he was an engineer, so he knew a lot of this stuff. He couldn't speak the language, but the people at the radio station said, "Okay, we're going to give you something, and if you can fix it, then you got the job." And he couldn't speak the language, but he knew how to fix things, and so he got the job. And he's the one who helped me build my first computer ever, and taught me about the programming. And I quickly realized that I had no interest in programming, how to do computer programming.
Right.
I just could not. And I would look at some of the computer programmers, and look at your local computer programmer today, folks. Look in their eyes. There ain't much going on there,
Oh yeah.
unfortunately. It's
Yeah.
a tough job. It's a different skill. And what's crazy now is a lot of the programmers are being forced out, because now the computers are doing everything for them. So they don't even need real computer programmers, which really sucks. So but they were always strong Christians. My father-in-law, he was actually, so he had to join the Soviet Union army. He saw something there. He saw some light, which he thinks was some type of a UFO. Doesn't know if it was like a secret Soviet ship or something, but he did see something there. He's seen demons. Before he became a Christian, he would do like cover songs for the Beatles, and so he was, very musically gifted. But there was one time where he was at his apartment, and he looks up, and all of a sudden there's these gray hands coming down from his ceiling, and he goes to the window as if he's going to jump out, and then stops and then prays to God, and then everything kind of, everything is fine after that point. But it was one of those stories that really stuck out to me. But a very strong Christian man, and my wife grew up in a very strong Christian family. Even to this day, my father-in-law passed away. They said he was going to die in like 2002. He ended up making it to 2021 or something like that.
Wow.
So, but
That's crazy.
mother-in-law, she ended up going to the church that we go to now, and she's like a big member. She's more involved in the church than we are. She's like all in, and we're just like, I'm still kind of, we're not members. I'm still kind of leery about the whole membership thing. It's like every time I would join a church or kind of get invested into the church, something would happen. I really like the church that we are going to now, so I do hope that all of that works out. But that's kind of our Christian journey.
Yeah, because I never asked you that before. Out of all the years that we've talked, I'm just like, I never asked Greg if it was something that you were kind of like, it was through your whole life, or if you discovered it after a rough time. Because you hear a lot of people getting saved, in prison or later in life, they kind of find their way to Christ, and I just never knew that. I never thought to ask you that. It's kind of a personal thing. I try not to really get into, probing on people and stuff, because some people like to keep that, close to their heart and stuff, and keep it personal. But I'm glad that you answered that. Thank you, because I didn't know, and that's true about radio too. I'm kind of glad that you touched on that, because radio, that was one thing that I discovered about you and we started chatting about, is that you did do radio for a while. So you're very familiar with this whole concept of radio and stuff. And I often go to you for advice and stuff, because there's stuff I'm learning about radio now I never knew. Especially being part of a local station now, I'm just like, okay, I don't know certain things. But you've done all this. Like, you had a radio show, you've been on radio, you're very cool. And do you think you would ever I would love to see you get back into radio. I know that you have children, and that's probably, that's going to take a lot of your time, and you're very busy working, and you're writing book after book, which we got to get into before the show ends, because you've written a lot of cool books that I've had the privilege of reading, and look forward to reading your other ones. But is radio something you're going to visit again?
Yes, I would love to. I would love to get back into radio. It's a lifelong thing. So obviously, with young kids and crazy schedules, it's not something that I would say that I could do now. On a monthly basis, sure, but on a weekly basis, that's tough. And I wouldn't want to start it and then not be able to go through with it. I don't think that I could live with myself if I did that. If I started it and then it was like, I just can't do this every week.
Right.
But yes, I do think once my children are older, it's one of the last things that I feel like in my life that I haven't accomplished yet. It's one of the last things. I would love to do that. I'd love to do a radio show, and then I would love to just put on one wrestling show, just one independent wrestling show. If I could do those two things before I die, Rick, I'll be very happy.
I can see you doing definitely both of them. Radio for sure, and putting up an independent show. If you got the money to put behind it, it's not hard to set up, because those guys love to wrestle. I was part of wrestling for a few years, and a company that was like independent, I guess you would call it. I mean, they weren't like WWE quality guys, but they were beginners and some intermediate, and some of the older wrestlers that we grew up with would come through too. Like, I remember meeting a lot of the older guys that we grew up to when we were like young, and they kind of do this full circle thing where they start in the amateurs, they get really big, go to the WWF at the time, and then they come back and their journey back. They go back to the independent circuit when their popularity wanes out. So you could definitely do an independent show, especially if wrestling is big in your area. I don't know how big it is, but there's got to be wrestlers around you somewhere.
Yeah,
I would think
there definitely are.
There you go. So yeah, you just need money, buddy. I always tell people that nothing that money can't do. Because I always have a lot of people asking me stuff like, "Can this be done?" I'm like, anything can be done. If you got the money, you can hire somebody to do it. Believe me, it can be done. So yeah, I think that'd be cool. Those are both very doable. I can see you having your own radio show, because you do a lot of YouTube, so you're definitely comfortable on the microphone, you're comfortable on camera, and you've done a lot of content on YouTube, which I want to make sure I give you a chance to let people know. But we got to kind of talk about your writing, because you've written a lot of books, and I can't believe the second hour is almost, we're almost over. We got to do a part 2 in the future, but tell people about your writing. Like, what was the first book that you wrote? I never asked you that either. What was the first one that you wrote?
The first book that I wrote is terrible, and it's probably still out there, because it was called False Flag, and the idea was good. that I wanted to write. I wanted to write about all the different false flags, how John F. Kennedy's murder was a false flag,
Mm-hmm.
how September 11th was a false flag, the Iraq War. But it ended up being more on things, and I was just like, I don't even want to read this, so why would I want anyone else to read this? But it was a fun experience. I got to learn about the self-publishing market and how all of that works. But it's like, I hope nobody ever finds it. It was terrible. It was
But it's a learning process, right?
It was a big learning process. Yes.
Yeah, I can't, because I always tell people I'm really fascinated by writers, that they can actually put all of that together and go through, start to finish, from concept to completion. I just find it fascinating. So I've interviewed a lot of authors, and really enjoy the conversations and figuring out how, like, their process of writing and stuff. And how many books have you published to date? How many are out there that you got a few?
Yeah, the one, if I don't include the ones that I want to hide that hopefully nobody ever finds,
Right.
I have 3 right now. So I wrote a book on September 11th. That I consider my first book. Okay. Then I wrote a book on David Crowley, who was a former soldier, who it's a murder mystery, basically, where they say he killed his wife, he killed his daughter, he killed himself, and that is just absolutely not true. That was my second book, called The Gray Stage. And then I just finished the Kennedy and Trump book, which I know has kind of turned everybody off. People who like Kennedy but don't like Trump, people who like Trump but don't like Kennedy, or people who just don't care about either or. So it's been a pretty interesting mix of the reaction that I've gotten from the book. But the main thing that I look back and I say, I'm writing these books, and I know you're not a wine drinker or anything, but it's like you want it to age like fine wine. Right. You can have a book and you can pay money and you can get it in the New York Best Time Seller. It's not that difficult. If you get 10,000 copies sold within the first 2 weeks, you could probably have it on the New York Best Time Seller list. Wow. And that's generally how all of this is done. You pay these companies to put your book into their stores, and if they don't sell, then they send them back to you, and you have to pay them back whatever money that they didn't make. But so the way that I look at my books is, I write these for my family, I write these for my friends, and I write these for people like me who go out and search things. Like, sometimes I'll just go out and like, I want to learn about this topic. Yeah, I've read this book, I've read that book. What else is out there? So I'm hoping that somewhere down the line, when people have read all of the mainstream books about Kennedy and read all the mainstream books about Trump, and they come across this book that's about both of them, then I think it'll resonate with those people. But it's more for my children, for my family, and for my friends. That's who I really write for.
No, that makes a lot of sense, and your Gray Stage book was great. That's how I think I first found you, was through the David Crowley case and the Gray Stage podcast that you did. And I encourage people, if you do like like a murder mystery, definitely go to his channel, Greg Fernandez Jr. And but the one that they would find for all that would be the Gray Stage. So if you type in the Gray Stage, that's where you would go. And Greg's got so many videos on the David Crowley case. If you haven't heard about it, look into it, because it's definitely a murder mystery, and there's a lot going on, and that would be a great place to start. And that was a great book that you wrote. Is there anything that I know you just did this Kennedy book, the Kennedy and Trump book, but is there anything? What are you planning on? Yeah, what are you planning on now?
Yes. So I got 2 more. I'm in the final throes of or 3 more. Actually, 3 more.
Oh my God.
But I'm in the final throes of this book, Shadows of Light, which just kind of covers the Kennedy murders. It covers various topics about the New World Order, the Bohemian Grove, the Bohemian Club, the Federal Reserve. How did that get started? How does that connect to this bigger thing that we see? But the main goal, the main purpose of this book is to show that even within all of this darkness, we will still find shadows of light.
That's right.
There are still shadows of light. So when we look at the JFK thing, when you look at any of these murder mysteries, you look at all this stuff, don't just focus on the darkness. Focus on the light that shines through it. Focus on all of the good things that can come from it. Because if we are just saying, this is bad, nobody cares about this, like I was saying, like how I felt when things were happening to my sisters, nobody cares. If you live in that darkness, you will never see light. You will just, and then you will actually bring your darkness to other people, where nobody else is going to want to be around people who are just continually negative. We all know somebody who is just that person. No matter what you say to them, their first reaction is something negative.
For sure.
I want to be the person, and I want to talk to the person like Rick. When you say something, their first reaction is actually something positive. Yeah. I want to have the conversation with that guy. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where this book is, and it's just a lot of extra stuff. And then I have a book about coronavirus, about COVID-19, the first early days. I was trying to document everything that was happening there. And then I have a book about another murder mystery that a lot of people may not know, about a man named Philip Marshall. Philip Marshall was a former pilot. He wrote a couple books about September 11th. He said that he was a contract pilot during the Iran-Contra things that were going on. Yeah. So he said he was Barry Seal's taxi driver, and he was accused of murdering or killing his 2 children, and then killing himself, and killing a family dog, a small little dog. He apparently shot it in the freaking head, which is just, the whole thing is crazy. But what we look for is, okay, if they're going to say that this guy murdered his children, I mean, we need to put a little extra effort into that. After everything that has happened with me and my childhood, that is why Philip Marshall's case, that is why David Crowley's case touched me in a different way, to say, you guys better really have something here that shows that they are guilty, or else I'm not going to believe you, and I'm going to call you out on it.
And so they don't. In either case, they don't have anything that really points to what the narrative they're pushing. It just, there's holes all through it, like many holes. And that's why I encourage people to look at. The Philip Marshall one was one that you told me about too, and then I went down that rabbit hole. And you have a couple good videos I saw that you put out where you went to the neighborhood where it happened, and you kind of looked around and stuff. So you're definitely were into looking, and you went out in front of Bohemian Grove, and kind of kept an eye on things. You've done that for years, so you're very active when you can be.
When I can be. Now with children and everything, it's different, Yeah,
you can't put yourself at risk, right? Like you did.
Well, I mean, it's just I'm not there. The crazy thing about the Philip Marshall case is we had already planned this wine tasting thing, this weekend gathering, and it just happened to be like right in the same area where this murder happened. So I just happened to be there. That's how God works. I was just there. I was at the right place at the right time. So I got to see 1 week after the murder mystery, after the murder happened, what was the neighborhood like? What were the locals like? What were they talking like? And it was different. The first week, everybody was a little more open to, okay, yeah, there's something really very, very strange. We go back 2 weeks after that, nobody wants to talk about it. Yeah, and so it's like this small town thing where everybody got the memo to shut up. We're not talking about this. We need to just make this thing go away. This is bad for business, which it is. So I totally get that. People aren't going to want to go and spend money and visit a little town where there may be a killer out there. There may be somebody who killed a man and killed his 2 teenage children for whatever reason, shot their family dog, a tiny little dog. Nobody's going to want to go to visit that town. So Murphy's, California is a very interesting place, and that's how I met, or that's how Steven Sanzeri got. He
Right.
contacted me about that because he has a long history with that. So one day, you, me, and him, we're going to have a nice conversation about Philip Marshall and Murphy's, California,
Absolutely.
and
We got, yeah.
wrestling and everything else. But
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I can't wait to do a three, like a round table with you and Steven. And I let all the listeners know right now, like, look forward to that because it's going to be, there's a lot. Steven Sanzeri is very interesting. And I have to thank Greg for getting me in contact. And I've done some interviews with Steven. So you can go to my YouTube channel. I don't promote my YouTube channel nearly enough, especially a local
no, you
here.
don't. You
Yeah,
should.
so yeah, definitely go to Crypt Ricks. I've been thinking, same as this show, Crypt Ricks. I've been thinking on YouTube or Rumble, and I'm also on Odyssey now. And you can check out my video interviews there. And there's some with Steven. I think I got a couple with Greg. I mean, there's a lot of great video interviews on many different topics. So I would love that. Go over there, subscribe, sub, all those great things. Like the videos. I never say that enough. I don't promote that enough, and I should. So yeah, if you want to see some great interviews, go to my YouTube channel. I would really appreciate it. Go to Greg's, as we said, it's the Gray Stage. If you want to look into the David Crowley murder mystery case, and then Greg's got some other channels. You got Greg Fernandez Jr. You cover a lot of the politics, what's going on, and that you got a lot going on for what you're being a father and a husband. You're working, you're writing, you're doing shows. You got a lot on your plate. You're really doing a
All
lot,
the blessings.
and
All
editing
the
my
blessings.
show.
Yeah, well, and it and let's also thank Revolution Radio too. They've been this is
Absolutely.
this is a great place. One of the last radio stations, the last real radio stations here. I just love everything that they are doing, and God bless you all.
Yeah, exactly. And I love radio. And I mean, I could do a whole show with Greg talking about just radio, and we have talked about radio a lot because I love that. I grew up with radio, and it's so near and dear to my heart. And I truly do believe that these types of conversations people are craving. I think that especially when AI starts really doing all the work and there's not really content creators doing their own thing, I think that people are going to crave this type of talking and communication and listening. They're going to go back to radio. I know I do. I can't handle a lot of the AI stuff that people are putting out now. So radio is what I grew up with. I know you did too, Greg, and it's
Yeah,
always going to be near to my heart.
there's something very special about radio, and God bless all of the local radio stations, all of the radio stations that are hanging in there. I know it is not easy. It's not easy, but for any of the radio stations who can do real radio and can thrive, keep it up. I mean, we definitely love you guys. We love you all.
Absolutely, and it's the generosity of the listeners. It really is that keep a lot of the radio stations up because and that's just true. I've always said that it's very much our listeners, incredible listeners. I was saying at the beginning of the show, Greg, I get incredible emails from my listeners, and they're just amazing listeners. They really are, and I can
Yeah,
never thank them enough.
what's the best way to support your local radio station?
The best way would be to, well, I would say go to the website, which I don't have off the top of my head. I don't think even unless you can bring it up quick. Do you remember the web address? Oh my God, I don't even have my computer. You say I can look really quick. Let's see if we got time to actually promote it. But it is Amherst Island Radio. That would be what you would type into Google. So if you want to check out the local radio station, because I'm kind of simulcasting right here with Revolution Radio and now Amherst Island Radio, which is a local station. And if you type in Amherst Island Radio in Google, you will come up and find it. And there's ways to donate and support there as well and get involved
Yeah,
because
isn't there something great about just tuning in and you're not sure exactly what you're going to hear, what you're going to see. You just
yeah,
kind of tune in to the radio station and whatever they're playing, hey, that's what you get. That used to be what MTV was. That used to be what
yeah.
radio is. Turn on your local radio station right now. You can't skip it. It's not Spotify. It's nothing like you can't skip through it. But hopefully they have good content that will keep you coming back to support the radio stations that you love.
Absolutely. That's a great way, Greg. I really do want to thank you for joining me. And you got into some really personal stuff, and I thank you because I think some people listening might it might help them. It really will realize that they're not alone, that they can go out there. And if this is something that you're going through, I would really, and I'm sure Greg would back me up on this, seek some help. Go and talk to somebody, family, somebody you trust. I know. I mean, what would you say, Greg? We got about 30 seconds, but would you not agree if I reach out to somebody, whoever it is you can trust, somebody that a teacher, a friend, a loved one?
Yes. There's someone out there. There's someone that you respect, that you know, that you can tell them anything. And if there isn't someone out there, pray for it. You will find someone, or someone will find you. There's always hope.
Yep. There you go. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. I will be back next week. Thank you for being here, Greg. I love you. I appreciate you, and I will see you guys next week. Take care, guys.